So for this video, I wanted to talk to you guys about the introduction to how to read literature like a professor, a lively and entertaining guide to reading between the lines. Now, I like this book, but I also think it's lying a little bit. I don't think it's really an entertaining guide. You'll like some of the chapters. If you're a person who loves reading, maybe you'll love the whole thing. I remember I was assigned this book way back when I was in AP Literature my senior year of high school as well, and I did not understand everything in this book, but some of it still stuck with me. So even if you're sitting there trying to read this and you're like, this is boring, plow through, because it is kind of like a textbook in that regard. Even though it says it's an entertaining guide, I don't even think it's that entertaining. Now, one of the reasons I think that a lot of students, including myself at the time, don't really like it, and you'll find YouTube videos of people like burning the book and stabbing it because they hate it so much, it's because of a lot of his references have to do with literature that you may not have read. So if you did not read the book, then you don't know the characters and you don't really get what he's talking about per se. But some of the stuff will be accessible. So just plow on through. Now I want to talk about the introduction when he talks about how'd he do that. All right? It's right in the beginning after the preface. Now I think that lays the groundwork for the entire book, so it's really important. And he talks about 3 specific words that really separate the professorial reader, the professional reader, the experienced reader, from somebody that's more of a novice or an amateur. And that is memory, symbol, and pattern. And that's really what this book is going to be about. So interpret this book through that lens. Memory, symbol, and pattern. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, and what he means, what I think he's talking about, is that when you're reading a book, you might not always get everything right away. You don't understand the interpretation. But then you notice that your teacher gives you an interpretation. You think they just pulled it out of thin air. Well, how'd they do that? Well, it's because they're more experienced and they've read more books and have more hours reading those books. That's really the difference. It's practice, practice, practice. And that's what AP Literature is going to do, and why this book has been assigned to so many AP Literature classes. It's because it is teaching you some skills of helping your memory when you're reading, of helping you realize some different symbols, and ultimately, the biggest keyword is helping you understand those patterns. Because that's what literature really is. So that when you pick up a book that we read, whether in class or independently, you're starting to see, oh, this character reminds me of that Shakespearean character. Or this Shakespeare character reminds me a lot about some character from the Hunger Games. Or, I'm watching Thor and it reminds me of Hamlet. You might make those connections because literature is built around patterns. Even when an author does something new, how new can it really be? There's going to be things in your mind, the way that you're processing your reading, to where you're making those connections. Sometimes it's an intentional connection by the author. They deliberately put an illusion in there. But other times it's just going to be you saying, hey, this reminds me of something that I've read before. Which brings me to the biggest component of AP Literature. If you want to do well in AP Literature, and if you want to do well on the exam, you need to read a lot. You can prepare in class. You can study YouTube videos, watch them. You can read textbooks. You can take practice tests. But the single greatest thing that you can do is read. And I know not everybody likes hearing that, but I firmly believe that if you are a reader, you can pass this exam, because you'll do pretty well in the essays, because you'll be able to talk about the memory, the symbols, and the patterns that you've seen all throughout literature that you've read. You'll be able to do well on the multiple choice because you're used to reading and interpreting passages. So if you want to do well on the AP Literature exam and in the class, read, read, read. All right? So hopefully this book, though sometimes it may be boring, can prove to be helpful. Don't try to sit down and read the whole thing in one day. I'd say take it a chapter at a time, maybe a chapter a week, chapter a day, whatever you got to do to get through it. But there are some entertaining parts, and those are the parts that you're going to resonate with and keep with you. So even if you walk away from this book only remembering maybe 3 or 4 things that you can put in your tool belt of literary analysis skills, then that's going to be very helpful. But remember, reading, the difference between being a great reader and an okay reader or an amateur literary analysis person, is through memory, symbol, and pattern. And the only way you're going to get those 3 components is by reading, is by practice, practice, practice. So do yourself a favor, read some books, and especially for AP Literature, read some fictional books, not just the required stuff. Go to the library, look online, just find something you're interested in reading and read it. And you'll be amazed that when you actually find something that you enjoy reading, you'll find that you actually do like reading. So do yourself a favor, boost your score a bit by reading some books.